Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of the program. My name is Echi Sikanku. Today, we are very pleased to have with us a very distinguished personality. This is somebody who has been named among one of the 100 most influential people in the artificial intelligence industry, AI. As we are all aware, AI is one of the most topical technological issues dominating the world today. Probably not one of the most, but the most talked about issue when it comes to digital issues, when it comes to technology. It's dominating everywhere. A couple of days ago, we were all on social media. I'm sure you had the conversation about Facebook or Meta, launching Meta AI and all of that. And so many people have been having conversations around it. But what exactly is AI? And is it all for good? What are some of the harms or the potential pitfalls around it that we should be aware of? And how can it, what are some of the effects that it's having on different aspects of society, elections, so other social aspects of our world? I will be talking about these issues today. And to have this discussion is somebody who is at the forefront of artificial intelligence, not just in Ghana, but globally, worldwide. She's not even based in Ghana. She's a Canadian-American or Canada-US American, but she was recently on an artificial intelligence roundtable with President Joe Biden, talking about these issues. She's authored a book. She's received awards for her work in this area, and I would like to introduce you to Dr. Joy Boldamini. Hi, Doc.
So happy to be here.
You're welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just forgive me. I know I got a Joy right, but the last part of the name.
Dr. Joy Bolamwini.
Dr. Joy Bolamwini. Dr. Joy Bolamwini. So Dr. Joy Bolamwini is our guest for today. To be very specific, her work is in the area of actually figuring out some of the inequalities or some of the biases that exist in the use of artificial intelligence. Yes, it is a useful tool. It's something everybody is talking about as an effective way of changing the way we use technology or making life more efficient for us. But she took it upon herself to look at some of the potential risks or the existential threats that are leading within it, and to bring all of our minds and our consciousness to it. Congratulations for the work that you've done, Doc.
Thank you.
It's a great pleasure for us to have you on the program.
Yes, and it's good to be back in Ghana. I haven't been since 1994. My family's all from here.
Oh, that's an interesting piece of background information.
Yes.
So you haven't been to Ghana since 1994?
A long time.
That's a long time.
Yes.
But just so our audience will have a certain connection, so I know you have Ghanaian parents, but then you also went via Canada, US. Tell us how that works. A bit about yourself and your background.
Well, we like education. So my dad was in Canada getting his PhD.
Okay.
And I was born the year he got his PhD. I was giving the mortarboard hat, everything. So
Right.
I was already on that pathway. And my grandfather was Dr. Daniel Juma Bedu. And so we have that academic lineage in my family.
Wow. So you were born in Canada, but then you went to school in the US, right?
So after I was 2, I came to Ghana and then joined my parents in the US and lived there for most of the time.
Wow, amazing. And you've come a long way since then.
Yes.
You went to high school in Memphis, am I right?
Oh, yes, you got that.
Yes. And then after that, what happened? A bit of your educational.
Oh, sure. So I was really fortunate to go to the Georgia Institute of Technology, and there I did my bachelor's in computer science. I did a Fulbright fellowship in Lusaka, Zambia, so that brought me back to the continent.
Wow.
And then I received the Rhodes Scholarship, so I went to Oxford University and did a master's there. And I mentioned earlier I'm from an academic family, so they're like, okay, master's is nice, but where's the PhD? So then I was thankfully accepted into MIT, and I went there to do a master's into a PhD program. So I finished my PhD. I have 4 academic degrees and now 2 honorary degrees.
Wow.
So I've done the work now.
Wow. Hey, kudos on that.
Thank you.
I'm sure it's been a tough journey, but you've breezed through it. So bachelor's in computer science.
Yes.
And then the master's and PhD in what?
So the first master's at Oxford University was on education, learning, and technology. And then when I got to MIT, that's when I started experimenting with AI systems that read human faces. So my first master's was actually focused on AI bias, the ways in which AI systems can work better on one group of people than other groups of people. And then I continued that work into my PhD.
Right.
And being a poet and an artist as well, I also started looking at ways in which you can use art as part of the communication around the social implications of AI.
Wow, that's amazing. So as you can see, she traverses the field of science and art. That's something I forgot to say at the beginning. So yes, she's a scientist, she's a tech person, and then she's a poet, she's an art person as well. And she tries to see how she can use both to tell some of the major stories or issues of the day. So beautiful. So after MIT, you got a PhD.
Yeah.
Yes, and then you got into industry. But even before you got there, this journey, how did this interest start? How did you get interested in this? And
so first it was my interest in robotics and computers. So when I was growing up, my dad always had many computers, not just at his lab, but also in the house.
Wow.
And he would get programming books. He just didn't have a lot of time. And I had plenty of time, so I would pick up his programming books and I would play around with the computers that we had at home. And then I started making websites for people. And my dad was asking me, why are you making these websites for free? So I started charging and I said, oh, the computer science thing can also give you some kind of entrepreneurial pathway. And so I built that as well. And so by the time I was going to undergraduate, I already had a bit of a background in computer science.
Wow.
And then I studied that even more at Georgia Tech. So I got into robotics and healthcare. So then by the time I was leaving Georgia Tech, I had gotten a Fulbright fellowship. So that took me to Zambia, where I was teaching Zambian youth how to code. And we were also working with iSchool Zambia on a project they had called the ZegiPad. So they were putting the Zambian curriculum on tablets.
Wow.
And I was training Zambian youth to make apps for those tablets because at the time, the developers were all coming from Europe. And I was asking, well, why not use the talent here? And they were saying, well, they need training. So that was the work I was doing, and then wanted to know more about education, learning, and technology. So that's what I focused on when I got to Oxford on the Rhodes Scholarship. And again, I thought I was through until I got that call from my dad, where's the PhD?
Right.
So that's what brought me to MIT and started that journey. And so I was always interested in computer science and trying to use technology for good. How I got into looking at technology and the way it could influence society is I was at MIT. I took a course that actually required me to build an art installation.
Okay.
And that particular art installation used face tracking technology. So there's a camera, it's supposed to detect my face on the computer, but it wasn't detecting my dark-skinned face.
Wow.
And I happened to have a mask in my office. So I was testing it, and first I drew a face on my hand, and I held it up to the camera, and it detected the face on my hand. So I was like, oh my goodness, okay, let me try what else is there.
Right.
And so I grabbed the white mask. Before I even put it all the way on, the white mask was detected. And I took the white mask off, my dark face wasn't detected. So I was thinking, okay, maybe it's just the lighting conditions, maybe it's the angle, but that's what started my curiosity to say, let's test these AI systems.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was that art installation about?
Okay, so it was a project called the Spire Bear. And so I took a class called Science Fabrication.
Okay.
And you were supposed to do something that you might otherwise not build, inspired by science fiction.
Okay.
So the people were reading the science fiction's books, but I actually took my inspiration from Anansi the spider.
Okay.
So I wanted to shapeshift, right? But I realized I couldn't change the laws of physics. We only had 6 weeks.
Okay.
So I thought instead of shifting my body, maybe I could shift the reflection in in a mirror.
Okay.
So there was this mirror that's made of a material called half-silvered mirror. And so it does this kind of nice effect.
Right.
So if it's completely black in the back, it looks just like a regular mirror.
Wow.
If light is there, the light will shine through. So I used that to do just the black background, and then I would put on the mask,
Right.
and it would look like it was on my reflection.
Right.
So that was the first part. And being the nerd I am, I wanted to go another step further so that when I moved in the mirror, it would also follow me. So kind of like some of these filters you'll see on a social app with a
Right,
video
right.
feed, a dog ears or something like that,
Right.
but in a real mirror. So the next step was to get it to follow my face. And that's when I got the software, tried to integrate it into the project, but it wasn't detecting my face. It got the hand with the drawn face, hand-drawn face, and it got the white mask, but not my face. So that's how the art led to this.
The discovery
Right,
of
yes.
certain racial biases.
Well, it led to the question because from that one experience, I couldn't say, oh, okay, they're all this way. I actually had to conduct an experiment.
Right.
So figuring out that experiment became the focus of my master's work at MIT.
Right. So the beginning of that research journey or experiment.
Exactly.
Wow. So we'll get into that into detail. But just to clear that barrier, I mean, everybody is talking about artificial intelligence. Oh, you got to use it. How are we using it in the newsroom? How are we using it in the hospitals, in our
Yes.
industry? Just very, very briefly, what is artificial intelligence and how can it help us in society?
Yeah, so artificial intelligence is the quest to give machines human-like abilities. So it could be the ability to communicate. So speaking to a chat bot, that kind of thing.
Right.
It's the ability to perceive the world. So you might think of a self-driving car trying to navigate. The
A self-driving car.
a car trying to drive itself. I don't know if it could make it on these streets.
In Ghana, right?
You know,
I know what you mean.
and elsewhere. And then you also have machines making predictions. So predicting, are you going to be a good student? So some of them, they use it to decide who gets admitted into college or not. AI used to thinking about human discernment. So who should get medical treatment, who doesn't. So then you now have AI systems that can be involved in really important decisions that can impact everybody's life.
Right. So it's just trying to use that advanced technology to make life or work more efficient.
In some ways, yes.
In some ways.
Yes.
Including in the newsroom, you were telling me.
Yes, so I was at a library event with families learning about AI, and they played this game, Real or Fake. So one of the examples they gave was there's a newsroom that is now, instead of having somebody like you with all the experience and the knowledge, they would use a deep fake
Wow.
of a virtual digital avatar. And that avatar would then deliver the news with a fake voice
Wow.
from generative AI. So you combine these two approaches, and then you have your virtual digital news anchor making maybe looking photorealistic.
Right, right. And so there are concerns that AI might take over certain jobs. I don't know if you've heard about those concerns.
Yes, especially being a new author. So after I wrote the book, I joined the Authors Guild, and then I took some time and I recorded the audiobook. And I thought maybe I could save myself. I'm busy, you're busy. Maybe I can save myself some time and have my AI voice clone do the audiobook. That's what I was thinking.
Right.
And then I met the director they paired me with to do the audiobook for Unmasking AI. And I thought I was just going to be reading aloud because I didn't really appreciate voice acting. When I met the director, she was explaining it to me that this is a marathon. You're performing everything that happened in the book. So when people hear it, they feel like they're with you, not a drone, kind of thing. So at the end of the day, I would be so exhausted. I would finish by 5 and I'd be in bed at around 6 because of how much energy it took. And so going back to the idea of AI replacing jobs and AI replacing people, it tends to be underestimating what it actually takes to be a journalist or to be a voice actor, right? And so then you think it's easily automated until you try to automate it, and it doesn't always quite get there. But the promise that it could means people make decisions prematurely. In the United States, there was an organization where they were hearing chatbots are going to replace call centers, all of this kind of thing.
Yeah.
So they fired their call center people. And they replaced it with the chatbot, and the people had unionized. They were trying to say, hey, we should be treated better. So they were already in a situation. Right. So that was the headline on Monday. I think by Saturday, they had shut that call center chatbot down.
Wow.
And now they didn't have the people. And the reason they shut it down is it was giving the wrong information, telling people to do the wrong thing.
Wow.
And that was not because the AI was so powerful, but the belief in the stories we're hearing about AI was really strong. So we have to be careful, but there will be many jobs that are automated and replaced because of generative AI systems.
Right. Okay. So now that we know that there is definitely that potential, or it's already happening with people using AI in so many different ways, ChatGPT and all of that. We now come to your area. So you have been able to do some research and say that, yes, this is useful, this is helpful, but then the way in which artificial intelligence is being used has some inherent gender and racial biases. So can you tell us about that work? And I'll just say that what we see at the background, Unmasking AI, is a culmination of your work. It's a book that you've written, which is focused on protecting what is the human, in the world of machines. And you've received awards for that. Is it the Actual Foundation?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, gave you by Prince Harry and Meghan.
Yes.
They gave you an award for your work in civil rights as far as artificial intelligence is concerned. So I wanted to use this opportunity to tell us about that centrality of your work. Because, according to, and I read about one of the reviews, they said if there's anybody we need to speak to on AI, you are one of them. So I just wanted to use this time to tell us about that chunk of your work, and what you've been doing.
Yes, as I mentioned, when I was young, I was so excited about computers and robotics. I went and I made it to MIT. We're programming, and I'm very excited about everything I'm hearing that technology can do and that AI can do.
Right.
And so then as I start working on student projects, including that mirror project, that's when I have the experience of coding in a white mask and my face isn't being detected. So I really had to challenge myself with this assumption that I had that many other people have, which is we know humans are biased. Like, as for people, it's a done deal.
Yes.
But machines, we hope and want to be neutral and objective, right? So there's no bias.
Right.
And so my question was, is it actually possible for something technological to be biased? That was my question.
Right.
I didn't actually know. And so that's when the research came in. And so when I had that experience of coding in a white mask, I then started asking, well, how are computers detecting faces in the first place? So that led me to this area called machine learning.
Okay.
So to detect a face, instead of trying to code every possible way a machine could detect a face, we learned quickly that was too hard because your face looks like this, someone else looks like a proper Ashanti. I don't know. There are all of these other ways you could code a face. Right. And so instead they said, let's think about the way children learn. Children, you see examples, right? And then you're learning from those examples. So they said, all right, let's have a training set and use this data. We'll collect faces from all over the world and teach the machine what a face looks like.
Okay.
So that's what happened.
Right.
The problem was the faces they collected were more of people from Ireland or Iceland, or you get my point, right?
Yes.
Lighter skinned faces.
Right.
And many of those data sets were also of people who were male.
Okay.
So by the time I come and I'm testing things out, those systems have been optimized for who I call pale males, right? Lighter men in that situation.
Right.
And so my research showed that with companies like IBM and Microsoft and later Amazon, AI products they were selling didn't work as well on darker skin faces as compared to lighter skin faces.
Right.
And again, it was going back to the data. What was it trained on? What was it tested on in the first place? And so I was alarmed because when I'm talking about machine learning, it's not just learning to detect a face. We might use that kind of approach to say, oh, can we detect cancer? Can we detect a skin condition? So all of these areas where you want to be excited about that technology. But if we're not included, people with dark skin, people from different parts of the world, then the AI systems we're creating are actually destined to fail the rest of humanity. So people think AI is all about looking forward, but the AI is based on data, and that data is a reflection of our past. So if the past is excluding people, it's not representative, then the technologies that are supposed to push us into the future actually entrench the inequalities of the past. And so that was what a lot of my research was showing, where I wasn't just saying, oh, I think this system is racist, I think it is sexist, or it's biased. I was testing different systems to see how it actually responded. And then we could actually say, here is the evidence. And the companies could replicate the findings. So you don't have to take my word for it. Many other people have replicated the findings showing all kinds of biases, racial bias, gender bias, age bias. Think of an ism, ableism, sexism, it's being embedded in AI systems.
Yeah, and so there were those gender inequalities, which is true. I mean, you mentioned even in healthcare, it means there will be biases in terms of any detections for female or issues or even racial issues.
Exactly.
And then you talk about albinism as well, even for albinos and others. But so my next question is about some of the social and harmful effects of artificial intelligence, if you can talk about that.
Yes, so right now I think about AI being a gatekeeper. So instead of having a hiring manager, now you might have an AI system deciding which resumes go through and which ones don't. So you have AI governing access to employment. You have AI systems that are deciding if somebody gets admitted to college or not. So it's part of the admissions process. Yes, thank you. And so here you have AI governing access to education. You have AI systems deciding if you get credit or not, right? If you get insurance or not, if you get benefits or not. So now you have AI, not just with the employment, not just with the education part, but other types of economic decisions. So because you have AI being embedded in so many critical areas of life, that's how it has this social effect. Who gets opportunity and who doesn't? Who gets coded in and who gets excoded and hence excluded?
Excluded, which is the AI word for excluded, right?
That's the one I came up with. So that's the poet having a little bit of fun. So we say the Algorithmic Justice League, we're here to free the excoded.
I like it. So I know you work on, and your organization, Algorithmic Justice League.
Yes.
Okay. I'll ask you to tell us what you do, but before we get there, I now want you to tell us how we can have a more equitable and accountable AI.
Yeah, so I think a big part of it starts with consent, affirmative consent. So many people don't even know what's going on in the first place to be able to say, yes, I want to be part of this, or no. And to have consent, you have to have awareness. So a big part is being aware and making sure that there are actually policies in place so people know if an AI system is being used. And further, not only am I aware that there's an AI system here, but that I have a choice in it. So that would be a first place to start, because otherwise you're pushing against the power you don't even see. So when it comes to job opportunity and resume screening, you would never know. You just never got the call, right? You know, so that I think that part is really important. I think another piece of it is thinking about about something I call algorithmic hygiene.
Okay.
So you wouldn't just brush your teeth once or floss once. I don't know. Hopefully.
No, I get what you mean.
Right,
Yeah.
you know. And so sometimes people think we can just check an AI system, put a certification, put it on the road and say we're good to go. But the thing is, these systems evolve and they can drift over time. So just because you tested it in one instance or in 1 year doesn't mean it's going to be fine for forever. And so with the algorithmic hygiene or the AI hygiene, you have to have this continuous testing of systems. Another thing that I would say is really important when it comes to accountable AI is thinking about if your system is fit for purpose.
Okay.
Are you getting this AI system because it's truly going to add value to your organization, is going to support some kind of policy? Are you getting it because everybody else is getting it? You're hearing AI is here, so now you've downloaded the thing, you're not exactly sure what's happening.
Right.
And so we see a lot of people doing this premature adoption. So before you integrate it fully, make sure you know what you're getting.
Okay.
Do a small pilot that's not going to impact if someone's getting into college or not, right? And then build out from there.
Okay, so some form of testing. Definitely.
Absolutely, before you deploy. Test before you deploy.
Sure. And I would ask you a couple of, maybe one or two, and then we'll end this. But what I want you to actually touch on now is, are there any other issues that we need to understand that I have not touched on?
I think one area that's really worrying me at the moment is an area known as lethal autonomous weapons. So now you have militaries that are adopting AI systems.
Yeah.
So think of a military drone, a plane that's flying on its own. Then you add a camera, and then you have a gun, and then you have facial recognition. And then you say, this is the target. All of the research that I've done and others have done show that people with darker skinned faces more likely to be misidentified, people with beards and so forth, more likely to be misidentified. But why this is worrying to me is on two fronts. If it's wrong, you misidentify and you actually get the wrong person, right? So you're killing the wrong person. But even if it's right, then if somebody is your enemy, then you have this very powerful tool to have an automated system go after them, right? And so that's another major area of concern where I think we would absolutely want to have some kind of international agreement in place around the parameters of AI in warfare and the military.
Wow, so implications for peace and security worldwide.
Absolutely.
We are in an election year. I just want to ask you, are there any potential threats that we should look out for in terms of the impact or the threat of AI on elections, good or bad, any way you want to look at it?
Absolutely. Well, the thing is, we've already seen examples of AI being used to manipulate people. So in the United States, for example, they took the voice of President Biden and they started doing these robocalls where you get a call from an automated system. And on the other hand, it sounds just like the voice of Joe Biden. And so they did basically a scam where they were telling people, don't vote. And it was from President Biden, supposedly, but it was all fake. You've had other instances where people will use deep fakes or cheap fakes. So